Welcome back live with Fives, baby. What's happening? All right, beautiful day here in sunny York, Pennsylvania. It's probably going to get in the 40s today, so that's nice. All right, so let's get right to it. We're going to talk about a few things today about selling and closing. I want to give you a few tactics on this and how to raise the value of whatever it is you're selling, especially if you're in the services business. We do this all the time. And the one thing that I see 99% of the people that we work with do at any networking event is they immediately start pitching what they do. Okay, so if we take this from the context of physical networking, going out to a chamber event, a B&I event, or any of these types of things, mixers and whatnot, you really have one goal. And that goal is building the relationship. And you want to really incorporate rapport, okay? And there's some really easy ways to do that. And the first thing is to not talk about yourself, or really even talk about what you're selling or what you do. And no, I've talked about this in past ones, but it's worth reiterating, is you really want to learn about the people that you're with, right? Because what we're doing is we're building relationships and building rapport. Now, I want to talk about how to supercharge that, how to add massive value during this. So when you get to the talking about your products and services, that you're adding so much value that cost isn't in the equation. And you do that through your entire sales cycle, okay? So just a couple of things that to point out. A lot of this is mindset, because we all go back to things that we know. And we all know how our product, our service, our offering works. And that's generally what we want to talk about, is how. And when you're selling, no one really cares how you do it. What they care is that you're solving their problems and adding value while you're doing that, because that's where the value is that you've solved the problem. The value isn't necessarily in the nuts and bolts and the how, okay? So first thing to do before you go out, or you're going to a meeting, or you're meeting somebody for the first time, you really want to think about their business. Like, what are they into? So you got to do some legwork and some research. You Google, look for press releases, 10K reports, all this, kind of get a sense of their business and where their frustration might be within their business. And that's pretty easy to do, but you got to immerse yourself into that. And this does take a little bit of effort. You want to get to know the people you're meeting with. You know, what are their likes, dislikes? Do they have certain biases that come out? Not like bad things, but do they have predisposition towards Apple or towards PCs? Like, just some things so you're not stepping in it when you're talking about. You never want to go and be like, oh, well, our stuff runs on a Mac and it's great, and they hate Apple products, or vice versa, or whatever, right? So, because those things with a tiny bit of research and understanding really help you build that rapport, because they're going to realize that you've done your homework. And then you got to focus on what they want. And this is the number one thing that people really struggle with, is that we project what we know and then we transmute that into what they want, versus listening and asking some open-ended questions and really digging into that. So obviously for salespeople and business owners, is the more they talk, the easier it is to sell, because you're listening and you're gaining insights to their psyche and to how they want to run their business. So, you know, we want to think about that initial part. So you're listening, you're thinking, you're consuming the information, and you have to be thinking about, how do you add service? How do you add value before the sale? Okay, so we come over here. We talked about social media. I'm going to come back to that in a minute, because this is a great tool to use to also build rapport. But you can add massive value to your leads and things when you're doing things on their behalf. All right, so maybe you've got a free offering you can pitch, like a free network assessment, a free cybersecurity assessment, something that's like, hey, you know, I thought maybe you'd be interested in this. I know we were talking about a little bit about security. If you want, this is a free thing I do. It's going to give you a total view of your network and where you're exposed. Do with it what you will. Now, the thing about this is, when you do something, there's no quid pro quo, right? You let go of the outcome. You say, well, I'm going to give this to them because it's what I do, it's who I am, and I want to add value to what they're doing and make them maybe more informed. You can give them introductions to other people that may enhance their business. Now, again, this is totally detached from the outcome that you want, which is selling, which is them buying your product. And that's the number one key thing, is that you're doing these things out of a mindset of service, a service for those companies. So if you're doing introductions, and you know, we do this a lot here, I was just talking to a gentleman this morning, and he's like, oh yeah, I have this thing and this opportunity. And I'm like, hey, I know somebody that could use that. It doesn't directly benefit me in any way, but it makes him better, makes the guy that I'm going to introduce him to better, and that's a win. Okay, that's adding tremendous value to that gentleman's business, and that's what we're about. Giving referrals, giving actual leads to those other businesses, and not expecting to get a commission or a check or for them to provide you leads later on. Like I said, this is just about serving them. Okay, and then the last one I like to do, because I do this a lot, I'm always doing a lot of research, finding articles, sending them out to people, saying, hey, how do we do this? This might be of value to you. So when we're doing that, if you're on here, make sure you're sharing and liking this, and getting this out to your friends, hitting that notification button, hammering the share button, doing that. And what you're doing is you're becoming the person that they need, that they can rely upon to drive their business and to help them out. And then you're going to start getting phone calls. I get this all the time. Hey, do you know anybody with this? Do you know anybody with that? Well, I'm in their psyche. I'm in their sphere of influence now as a person, as a resourceful person for them. And it's fantastic, the amount of leads and things that you get from that, and the reciprocation in unconventional ways, in ways that we never, I never would have thought of, which is fantastic. So why do we do this? Because it's all about improving that close. Now, if you're adding massive value through this and they're seeing that, especially if you're competing with somebody else, you're already in the forefront of their psyche. So when they come and you're saying, well, this is the price, this is what you get, there's generally not a price conversation at the end. And we do this all the time. When we're dealing with people, we have rates, that's what they are. So we go out and we're like, this is it. And during those conversations, I'm doing this. I've done the research, I know who I'm going to talk to, I understand what their needs are, and then I'm adding massive value through that. And one example, we had a client not so long ago that came in and we're talking about leveraging one of our services for social media and all of this, but they didn't have a business strategy. And I'm not a fan of doing anything unless you know how to grow your business and the metrics by which you're going to measure that. And so we went through this whole thing, and they're like, yeah, we need the metrics and we need the measurement, we need a business plan, and that's all well and good, and then we'll do some social and some marketing, digital marketing stuff on the side. And so throughout the process, I'm adding like, here's why, here's the value, here's how it addresses your specific problems. I go away, I send them some articles, we're communicating back and forth. It's really good. And then we get to the conversation at the end, a couple days later, and they're saying, well, how about we just do this or do that? And I said, like, look, there's no value to you if you just do a piece of it, right? So this is the cost, this is what it is, and here's what you're going to get out of it. And by listening, I was able to go back and hit their needs, which was in direct alignment. We weren't fabricating anything, so I want to be clear about this. You got to have a high degree of integrity to do this. So if your offering doesn't fit their needs, then that's where you come back and say, well, I got a partner that does that really well. Anyway, we added that, and then I left. I let them think about it. I gave them some more stuff to ponder, and by the time I got back to my office, I got the deal. And that's that really high value selling that takes a lot more energy than just going out and hammering somebody at a networking event and be like, oh, I build websites, and throwing cards at people. That tends to irritate people. And so in this value-based system of selling, you're really ingratiating yourself to them by providing them massive value. So let's just recap a little bit on this for those of you that are just joining in. That when we're adding massive value, our goal is to get to improving your close ratio, and not just improving your close ratio, but increasing your margin on that close, right? So you're not adding or taking discounting and doing things just to get business because you're desperate. So the thing here, when you're going out and you're going into a business, couple steps to do the research, understand their business, understand where they're doing really well or maybe where they're struggling, and try to get that framework. And you can do that just by doing some simple Google searches on that. Do the research, know the people you're talking to, understand their biases, Mac, PC, and then when you get in that meeting, you got to really listen to what they want. So a good rule of thumb is that if you're in sales in any capacity, is that you're letting them talk 80% of the time and you're talking 20% of the time. I meet so many salespeople that all they do is what they want to talk, and it's kind of a turnoff. And because what you're doing is you're selling is your relationship. They're going to be buying you. They're not buying your service or product. They're buying you and that relationship you're building. And so what we're doing through all of these steps is we're building rapport with them, right? So, oh, he does understand. He's taking the time, or she's taking the time to understand my business. It's great. And then you think about service. How do I serve them even well before the sale? It may be the first time you meet the people, all right? Because you want to become indispensable to them because you're providing amazing value. So then we come back to adding massive value. So what, some of the things you can do to add massive value: free offering, right? So I talked a little bit earlier about free network assessments, free security assessments, free dark web assessments, free whatever. That's related to your business, of course, but more importantly, maybe you have a tool that just benefits them. Give it to them, all right? Ingratiate yourself by saying, hey, thought this might be helpful to you, thought you'd like it. And again, there's no quid pro quo. You're not connected to the outcome. That's a key piece of this. You're not connected to the outcome of the sale, right? Because you're doing this out of service. It's like you go to a soup kitchen and do some work, feed some people. You're not expecting anything in return, right? That's what I talk about when I'm talking about service. Though I do have a funny story about a client of mine that was working at a soup kitchen, and she happened to be looking for a job, and lo and behold, she was serving food and having a great time, and she was next to a CEO, and by the time they ended, that she ended up interviewing with him for a job and things like that, just because she's out doing service. So again, totally unexpected. All right, so free offerings, you can do introductions, networking, things like that, connecting people to high value people in their network that's going to help their business with no expectation of getting anything in return. Sending articles and referrals to their businesses, that's a great thing. Like, hey, there's a guy that's looking for X, I know you do X, maybe you should give him a call, or I'd be happy to do an introduction if that would help you. We do that. So we talked the other day on Wednesday about social media, and I want to plug this in now because it's the exact same thing that where Facebook is going with this, is to build a high degree of engagement. And we're doing the same thing, except we're leveraging the construct of Facebook to do it. By using groups, you're driving engagement, which builds rapport, and you're building these relationships. So what you're doing in that essence is you're building a warm tribe, and they're going to know you because they get the value of the stuff you're posting. And I've had that happen. I had that happen the other night. I was at a networking event, and they're like, oh, I just joined your group. This is good stuff. Fantastic, Tim. I really like it. Great. Not trying to sell then. You know, we're just building that rapport, really good rapport, moving on. And now I'm kind of ingrained in there, and we're continuing to feed that. So if you go to our Facebook page at FivesSquared, and then you go to the groups, you can see the groups that we've got listed up. They're by topic and by geolocation and things like that. So feel free to go out and join them. Get some value out of that. So, to wrap up today, everything from, okay, well, before we wrap up, one last point is, why do we do this? We do this because we're adding massive value through your sales cycle, through that sales funnel. So when you get to the pricing discussion, generally there's no compromise on the price, because you can kind of come back and say, well, this is the level of service we do. If that's what we're doing throughout the sales cycle, you're going to get 10 times that as a client, right? And I wouldn't necessarily use those words, but you can draw those examples out through your sales when they're starting to do the negotiation, and when they're pricing somebody else out against you. You're like, well, how's their service? How are things going with them? And kind of put yourself at that next level. So we'll talk about that a little bit more on Monday, the final close type of thing, and the verbiage and the language you use to do that. But don't ever underestimate the power that being a service-based seller leads to in their psyche, because they're going to intrinsically know this. Their subconscious is going to pick up on that, and the key to that is just having detachment from the outcome. So I hope this is helpful. I hope you're all having an amazing day. And next week, we're going to be really focusing on people and how to deal with them. And this is the segue into that, because we're all dealing with people now, and building rapport is building your business. So I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Love you guys. See you Monday.